My name is Emma. That night, I stood with my mother-in-law in front of the door to a luxury apartment in downtown Seattle. The place my husband, Daniel, had secretly rented to live a second life. But when the door opened, the one standing there wasn't a stranger. It was Allison, my best friend from college who had disappeared from my life many years ago. In that moment, it felt like the ground collapsed beneath me. It was humiliation mixed with a blade cutting deep into memory. The man who had sworn vows to me at the altar, the friend who once held my hand through youth, they had chosen to betray me together. Have you ever lived through a moment when the people closest to you became the very ones to break your heart? Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe so we can walk this journey together as I uncover the truth behind that door. My story has only begun. The moment Allison opened that apartment door, my whole body froze. That familiar face had once been my anchor through the years of youth, and now she was here, in the role of the other woman. The smell of freshly brewed coffee drifted out, sharp as a slap across my chest. Margaret, my mother-in-law, said nothing. She looked at Allison in surprise, but quickly drew back, replacing it with the calm coldness of a seasoned woman. I wanted to scream, to demand why Allison of all people, but my throat locked tight. My mind pulled me backward through time, remembering how far Daniel and I had come, and why this betrayal stung so bitterly. 15 years earlier, Boston, under crimson autumn leaves. I met Daniel at a joint architecture law seminar. I still remember it clearly. He was a senior law student in a crisp white shirt, smiling with confidence. I was a fresh architecture graduate, intoxicated by blueprints and buildings. We talked about art and justice, two worlds that seemed unrelated but somehow intertwined. Law keeps society upright, Daniel had said. I laughed. Just like architecture keeps a building from collapsing. We fell in love quickly, young, fierce, tethered by ideals. After 3 years under blooming cherry trees in a small Boston garden, Daniel knelt and proposed. I remember his eyes, bright, sincere, and I believed he was the only man I could entrust with my life. We married and moved to Seattle, where he began his law career. Daniel soon became a familiar face in legal circles, handling all kinds of commercial cases. I once had a career too, stepping into ambitious architectural projects. But when Ethan was born, then Lily, I chose to stay home to hold the foundation together. I believed family needed stability, that one day I would return to work. Daniel often held my hand and said, "You're the solid ground that lets me reach higher." I believed him. Margaret, my mother-in-law, was extraordinary. Once a literature professor at the University of Washington, widowed young, she had raised Daniel alone. She was strict yet fair, always reminding us that honor and integrity mattered more than any victory. I respected her deeply, and she treated me like a daughter. Every Sunday evening we gathered in her wide kitchen in Laurelhurst. Margaret told stories of literature, Daniel shared about trials, and I listened while Ethan and Lily played under the table. Those moments felt like proof of a lasting family. I thought nothing could ever break it. And Allison, she and I had known each other since college. She was a classmate in architecture, sharp, beautiful, and always drew attention. We once stayed up nights finishing models, dreaming of starting our own design firm. But in our senior year, a crucial project drove us apart. My drawings vanished the day of submission, and Allison turned in a design almost identical. I suspected her, but with no proof. We fought bitterly and cut all ties. Allison disappeared, leaving me with both regret and bitterness. So when Daniel introduced her at a fundraiser last year, I was stunned. He said she was a freelance graphic designer he had once helped in a small legal matter. "You should reconnect. Allison's talented," he encouraged. I hesitated but tried to open up. Little did I know it was all smoke and mirrors. The pale autumn light poured into my kitchen, gilding the wooden table. I was clearing dishes when the laptop chimed with incoming mail. Normally, I wouldn't open messages during dinner, but the subject froze my heart. Investigation results. Daniel Harrison. My hands shook, my chest pounded. The screen lit up, line after line of the detective's report, each piece of evidence cutting sharp. First came the lease contract for the Capitol Hill apartment. Daniel's signature, precise and undeniable. The landlord's name, the signing date, everything like a verdict. Scrolling down, copies of utility bills, paid monthly from a bank account I'd never seen. A separate account. My fingers dug into the table edge. For years I believed we shared one savings, no secrets. Yet parallel to the home I guarded, he had built another. Then the photos. Daniel, casual shirt, grocery bag in hand, smiling at Allison. The two walking into the building, comfortable like long married partners. Another. A morning scene, coffee steaming on the balcony, a small dog curled at their feet. My breath caught. The man who kissed me goodbye each morning had another ritual elsewhere with someone else. But the harshest blow wasn't the bills or the photos. It was the last picture. Allison smiling, her head tilted, revealing a silver necklace. A tiny blue stone glinted in the sunlight. My heart stopped. That necklace. It had belonged to my mother. When she died, I guarded it as a treasure. One evening years ago, it vanished. Daniel had comforted me. You probably misplaced it. Don't worry, it'll turn up. I believed him. I blamed myself. But the truth? He had taken it and given it to Allison. I collapsed into a chair, mind spinning. Memories rushed back. Vows under cherry trees, family dinners, Ethan and Lily's laughter when Daniel told bedtime stories. Now all distorted. I touched the screen, hoping the image was an illusion. But it stayed, clear, cruel. I reread from the top, searching for a loophole, something to cling to. But each detail was airtight. The address, the contract ID, the account number, even grocery delivery schedules. All in Daniel's name. There was no denying it. The husband I trusted for 12 years had built a parallel life. That night I didn't sleep. I lay beside Daniel, listening to his steady breathing, unaware I had uncovered his secret world. Staring into the dark ceiling, I felt buried alive under layers of lies. I remember getting up, opening my desk drawer, printing each page of the report. The printer's hum echoed like a funeral drum in the quiet house. I stacked the papers into a black folder. For the first time, I shook not from grief but from a deeper fear, that my entire life had been an illusion. I thought of Ethan and Lily. They were too innocent to realize that under this seemingly solid home, the foundation had rotted. How many times had Daniel left us for that apartment? How many times did he kiss me goodbye only to run to Allison, carrying the scent of our family on his shirt? The thought made me sick, as if poison coursed through my veins. The next morning as I made breakfast, Daniel came down as usual. He kissed my cheek lightly, his aftershave faint in the air. I flinched. He sat at the table, asked about Ethan's homework, praised Lily's hair. I stood watching, feeling like I was witnessing a staged play. Inside, part of me wanted to scream, to slam the folder down in front of him. But another part rose colder. I needed certainty, I needed evidence secured, and I needed to decide where I was going. The proof I held could shatter our marriage, but I knew Daniel, a lawyer skilled at covering tracks. He wouldn't surrender easily. My fury had to be contained by clarity. I had to think beyond the rage. From that day on, every time Daniel's phone rang, I flinched. Every time I saw him adjust his tie in the mirror, I wondered if he was heading to meet a client, or Allison. Ordinary details now carried the weight of suspicion. But among all my doubts, the image of the necklace haunted me most. Not for its material value, but because it carried memories of my mother. I had once promised to pass it down to Lily when she grew up. And now, it hung around the neck of the woman who had stolen both my friendship and my home. I had once thought that when I discovered the truth, I would throw every piece of evidence in Daniel's face, leaving him no room to deny it. I had imagined screaming at him, exposing him in front of our children, letting the whole world see his true face. But once the rage ebbed, fear rushed in. Daniel was a seasoned lawyer. He knew how to argue, twist situations, and turn victims into culprits. If I exploded, I would fall into his trap, painted as an unstable, even hysterical, wife in everyone's eyes. He could use my anger as evidence against me in divorce court. And that could mean losing my children. I clutched the folder in my arms and sank onto the kitchen floor. The ticking clock echoed in my mind. Ethan and Lily's faces appeared before me. Ethan with his basketball tucked under his arm, often asking me, "Mom, do lawyers ever argue wrong and still win?" And Lily with her sparkly ballet shoes, running to hug me, kissing my cheek with a giggle. I couldn't let them see their mother broken, nor could I let Daniel take them away. I had to stay calm. I needed an ally. In that moment, one name rose in my mind: Margaret. The next day I drove to Laurelhurst. Margaret's house stood in a quiet neighborhood, lilacs climbing over the white fence. I climbed the steps, gripping the folder tightly. When the door opened, her kind face appeared, blue eyes still sharp with the wisdom of a professor who had spent decades at the lectern. "Emma, you're here so early. Daniel didn't come with you?" she asked warmly. I could only whisper 2 words. "No, Mother." Her smile faded. She welcomed me inside, poured jasmine tea and gently placed her hand over mine. "What is it, dear? Tell me. Don't let pain suffocate you alone." I couldn't hold back any longer. I opened the folder. Photos, invoices, contracts laid one by one on the polished wooden table. Margaret studied them, her brow furrowing, her hand beginning to tremble. When Allison's photo appeared, she gasped, "Oh my God." I spoke softly, my voice breaking. "Mother, I know you've always trusted Daniel. But this is the truth. I have no choice but to show you." Margaret pressed her hand to her forehead, leaning back. It took her a long time to speak. "Pie's son, he betrayed you. Betrayed the children. And he betrayed me." I looked at her, seeing for the first time the deep wound etched into her face. My heart ached more for her than for myself. The husband I trusted most and the friend I once treated like a sister. They betrayed me together. I don't know where I belong anymore. Margaret gripped my hand tightly. "Emma, you are not wrong. Daniel and Allison are wrong. You gave up your career to build this family. You are not alone." Tears spilled from my eyes. I had braced for her to deny, to defend her son. Instead I saw pain, but also resolve. At last, Margaret sighed. "What do you plan to do next?" I shook my head. I thought of confronting him, but Daniel is too skilled. He would paint me as unstable, twist the truth. "I need you. I need someone he cannot deny. I want you to witness. If that's what you need, I'll stand with you." "Emma, sometimes the greatest pain for a mother is seeing her grown child stray from the very values she taught. If this is who Daniel has become, then I too must see it with my own eyes. Not to forgive, but to stop living in illusions." Her words left me trembling yet steadier. But that night back home I fell into torment again. I sat by my children as they slept. Ethan clutched his basketball tight. Lily curled in her pink blanket with swans. The peaceful sight broke me into tears. If the truth came out, what would happen to their world? Would friends whisper at school? Would families' eyes change? Would they still believe in their father? Would they resent me for dragging it all into the light? I stroked Lily's hair, whispering, "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect this family the way I promised." I sat there for hours, cloaked in loneliness. Nowhere to hide, no one to lean on except Margaret. I felt both like a lost child and a mother bearing the weight of everything. The next morning, Daniel smiled and joked at breakfast, oblivious to the shifting air. He talked about the office, asked about Ethan's classes, reminded Lily to practice for her recital. I watched him, torn apart inside. How could he pretend so easily? When he left, I sat in silence for hours as if I had survived an invisible earthquake. I was isolated in my own home. And in that isolation I realized, if I wanted to preserve a true home for my children, if I wanted the family's honor not to drown in deceit, I had to act. There was no turning back. After my talk with Margaret, I knew photos and Elise wouldn't be enough. To confront a lawyer like Daniel, I needed more, evidence so undeniable that no one could look away. I began observing quietly, noting every detail. Daniel kept his briefcase in the study, the drawer locked but the key hanging in the closet. One evening while he showered, I opened it. Among the papers was a stack of bank statements. As I flipped through, a chill spread down my spine. Large withdrawals, regularly funneled into an account under Monroe Design Studio. I recognized it immediately, Allison's front company. But what stunned me more was the source. Not Daniel's private funds, but the family account. The one meant for Ethan's college, Lily's dance lessons, and our household expenses. I bit my lip until it bled. He had taken money from our home to fund his betrayal. But I didn't stop. I asked an old friend, Sarah, now at a bank, to dig deeper. Over lunch at a cafe near the kids' school, she slid a thick folder across the table. "Emma, I can't give you everything, but what I found is enough for you to understand," she whispered, glancing around. I opened it. Beyond transfers to Monroe Design, there were strange transactions from a company called Westlake Development. Tens of thousands of dollars, vaguely labeled as consulting fees. Daniel isn't a real estate consultant, I murmured. Sarah nodded. Exactly. This looks like kickbacks. A form of under-the-table corruption. He's taking money in exchange for legal protection in a disputed land deal. My chest heavy as stone. Beyond infidelity, Daniel had dragged our family into corruption. If exposed, the Harrison name wouldn't only collapse, it could face criminal investigation. That evening, I drove to Margaret's again and handed her the folder. She read, her face growing pale. Not just an affair, he's taking dirty money? Her voice shook with anger and grief. Mother, I thought this was only about love. But it's far bigger. Daniel used our family's money, mine, the children's, to support Allison and to cover shady deals. This isn't only betrayal of marriage. It's betrayal of the very values you raised him with. Margaret slammed her hand on the table. Emma, my son must face responsibility. And this time he will have no escape. In the days that followed, I lived two lives. In front of Daniel, I smiled, cooked dinner, listened to his office stories. But once he left, I became someone else. Quietly gathering evidence, recording each transaction, copying contracts, contacting Sarah for confirmation. At night, I sat in the study, desk lamp casting shadows over my tired face. Papers spread across the table. Contracts, statements, photos. I sorted them into piles. Infidelity, finances, corruption. Each sheet pierced me yet also armed me. One evening, Daniel spoke urgently on the phone outside. I stood in the dark, listening. His voice was low, tense. Don't worry, the money's transferred. Westlake won't face trouble. I've handled the bank. Just keep quiet and everything will be fine. I clenched my phone in my hand, my heart racing. This was the final piece. I told Margaret, Emma, we can't leave this to court alone. If it explodes there, Daniel will twist it, cover it. But if we reveal it in front of family and associates, he can't deny it. I want everyone to know. Not just the affair but the money. I want them to see who Daniel really is. Margaret's eyes hardened. Then we'll choose the moment. A family gathering. With relatives and colleagues present. Daniel will be forced to face it. Mother, I'm afraid. If it all blows up, what about Ethan and Lily? She placed her hand over mine, her voice firm. Emma, sometimes the brutal truth is the only way to protect the children. They need to know who their father really is so they don't grow up in illusions. You are not alone. I'm here. That night, holding Lily as she slept, I looked at her innocent face and my tears soaked the pillow. I knew the road ahead would drown me in storms. But I also knew I had no other choice. When the thick folder was set down on the wooden table in Margaret's living room, I saw her shoulders tremble slightly. Her eyes were bloodshot, as if fighting back tears that refused to fall. Emma. Her voice broke. I once believed Daniel would never betray the values I taught him. And yet now, he hasn't only betrayed you and the children, he has betrayed his own conscience. I gripped her hand. Mother, I know this pain cuts even deeper for you than it does for me. But I can't stay silent. I won't let Daniel twist the truth one more time. If you agree, I want both of us to face him together. She nodded slowly. If you need a witness, I'll be your witness. If you need someone to stand beside you, I will stand beside you. He is my son, but the truth cannot be denied. I felt a small steadiness settle inside me. But I didn't yet know the truth was more complicated and more frightening than what I held. That evening, as I reviewed the documents Sarah had sent, one detail stood out. In Westlake development statements, beyond the transfers to Daniel, there was a name listed under project sponsor, Arthur Harrison. I blinked. Arthur. His name was a ghost in the family, long gone from Margaret's and Daniel's lives. He had once been Margaret's husband, but left her and their son when Daniel was 15. Since then he had never made contact, as if he never existed. My hands shaking, I opened the attached files. In the land transfer contract, Arthur's signature appeared, with the title Senior Advisor. The room spun around me. Daniel wasn't only betraying our marriage or tied up in corruption. He had also partnered with the very father who abandoned him and his mother. The next day I went to Margaret. She was watering the garden when she saw my ashen face. Emma, what is it? Did you find something else? I handed her the papers. She wiped soil from her hands, opened them, and when she reached Arthur's name, her face went white. She sank onto the stone bench, her hand over her mouth. No, impossible, she murmured, voice trembling. Arthur, after all these years. Mother, I can hardly believe it either. But that's his signature. And the money Daniel received came from Arthur's project. Arthur walked out, left me and Daniel to struggle. I raised him on a professor's salary, taught him integrity so he wouldn't become his father. And now, he's following in his footsteps. Her voice fractured, each word snapping. My son has chosen the very path I feared most. I held her, feeling the pain of a mother betrayed not only by her son, but torn apart by the past returning. That night, I began fitting the pieces together. Daniel is having an affair with Allison. He used our family funds to sustain that relationship. He took kickbacks from Westlake Development. And Westlake Development is backed by Arthur Harrison, his father. The picture came into focus, cold and clear. Daniel wasn't only a betrayer in marriage, he was a pawn in his father's power play. The following day, I decided to speak plainly to Margaret about what I feared. Mother, I don't think Daniel stepped into this alone. I believe Arthur pulled him in. Maybe Daniel thinks he's finally being recognized by his father, finally allowed into the family the man once abandoned. Emma, you have a point. Daniel has always longed for a father. He resents Arthur, but he also craves his approval. If Arthur returned offering money and power, then Daniel may have blindly followed. And because of that, this isn't only about an affair or money. This is a web of lies woven by Daniel and Arthur together. If we don't stop it, it will swallow the family. Emma, I lost a husband because of Arthur and now I'm losing a son because of him. But if Daniel has truly chosen this path, I would rather face the truth than look away. In the days that followed, I lived in a state that was both painful and lucid. I watched Daniel, how he slipped outside to make calls, how he murmured about the advisor, or Uncle Arthur. I pretended not to know, but inside I was certain. Arthur was no longer a ghost. He had returned and was pulling his son's strings. I began to plan. If I confronted Daniel alone, he would twist the truth. But with Margaret and evidence of Arthur, everything would be different. I wasn't out to shame a husband, I was out to expose a scheme, but also that he had become a puppet to the man who once destroyed this family. One night, Margaret and I sat in the living room. She held a teacup, her voice hoarse. Emma, I'll do this with you. But are you sure you're strong enough? This isn't a fight between a wife and husband. It's a fight against Arthur's shadow. Mother, I'm not afraid of Arthur. He left once and now he's back only to drag Daniel into a pit. I won't let him destroy my family again. In her eyes I saw pain but also strength. The strength of a mother willing to stand against both her son and her ex-husband to protect what remains. That Thanksgiving, Margaret's house glowed with lights, the scent of roasted turkey and pumpkin drifting down the hall. I walked in with Ethan and Lily, the two of them chirping greetings to grandparents, aunts and uncles. I looked around. The familiar faces of the Harrison Caldwell clan, close friends, even a few of Daniel's legal associates I'd met at fundraisers. Laughter filled the air. But inside me it felt like the edge of a storm. Daniel arrived later than usual. When he stepped in, immaculate suit, a stiff smile, the room seemed to dip. I saw his eyes scan the crowd and stop on Margaret and me standing together. He paused, then slid back into confidence like a lawyer entering a courtroom. Sorry everyone, traffic, he said, setting a store-bought pumpkin pie on the table. Margaret didn't respond. She gently tapped her glass, her voice carrying through the room. Before we sit down, I have something to say. And my son Daniel needs to hear it first. Margaret's steady gaze gave me strength. Daniel's brow twitched, he kept his tone cool. Mother, it's Thanksgiving. Can this wait? No, Margaret cut in firm. We're doing this now. The truth can't be hidden any longer. I stepped forward and placed the folder on the lace-covered table. I opened it. Photos, statements, the apartment lease, laid bare before everyone. Gasps rippled, hands flew to mouths. I want you all to know, I said, keeping my voice level. The man you trust, the husband I've shared 12 years with, has betrayed this marriage. This is the secret apartment he rented in Capitol Hill. These are the withdrawals he made from our family fund to transfer to Monroe Design Studio, Allison's company. I held up a photo. Daniel and Allison hand in hand, smiling. Daniel blanched but tried to stay composed. Emma, you're misunderstanding. I can explain. I cut him off. How will you explain these photos? These bills paid with money meant for our children. Eyes swung to Daniel. I saw his associates frown, exchanging uneasy looks. Just then a woman's voice sounded from the door. Let me speak. Allison stepped in, soft curls, a sleek dress. The room erupted in whispers. Ethan's eyes went wide. Lily squeezed my hand. Allison held her head high, though her voice shook. Daniel told me he and Emma were separated. That the marriage was only on paper. I never meant to intrude on a family. A bitter laugh escaped me. Separated? We lived together. You kiss our children goodnight. And you call that separated? Margaret moved forward, her gaze like ice. Allison, you can lie to yourself, but don't lie to us. My son is a liar, and you have been his accomplice. Allison bit her lip, eyes brimming. I love him. I believed what he said. I stared straight at Daniel. Do you dare tell your children, tell your mother, that this marriage ended long ago? Daniel said nothing, jaw clenched. The room felt like a courtroom without a judge. And then Margaret struck the final blow. She pulled a small box from the dining drawer and set it hard in front of Daniel. Inside, glinting under the lights, lay the silver necklace with the blue stone. Daniel, her voice rang cold and clear. This necklace was Emma's mother's keepsake, passed down to her. You said it was lost. But here, she turned to Allison, fury in her eyes. It was on her neck at a party. My son, did you steal a family heirloom to give to your mistress? A stunned hush spread across the room, quickly unraveling into indignant murmurs that I watched cousins and colleagues shift from confusion to contempt. Daniel trembled. Mother, I didn't mean to. I only what? Margaret snapped, her voice like thunder. Only lies. Only trampling on the trust of your wife, your children, and this very family? Do you understand that when you gave that necklace to Allison, you severed the last remaining ties? Daniel stammered, unable to find words. Allison stepped back, face pale. For weeks, I had carried the humiliation and the truth alone. Now everything was laid bare in the light, in front of the people he valued most. Ethan gripped my hand. Mom, what's happening? His voice trembled. I bent down, held him close, and whispered, Stay with me. I'll handle everything. Margaret stared straight at Daniel, her eyes blazing with fury and disappointment. From today on, Daniel, you will pay the price yourself. No more mother, no more Emma, no more family standing behind you to shield you. Daniel stood frozen in the bright living room, face ashen, fingers clenching and releasing as if he couldn't find anything to hold on to. The buzz around the table had faded into a suffocating silence. He tried to speak, but his voice shook and fractured. Emma, I know I was wrong. But everything I did was to protect this family. I laughed, a joyless, bitter sound that echoed through the room. I stepped forward and looked him in the eyes. Which family, Daniel? The family you built with Allison in that secret apartment? Or the family you sold out to your father, the man who abandoned your mother and you, in exchange for money and power? Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His excuses clogged in his throat. In his eyes I no longer saw the confident gleam of a winning lawyer, only the panic of a man cornered. Ethan and Lily stayed beside me, their eyes wide, not yet grasping the complexity of what had unfolded. I knew that from this moment, I had to make a decision not for myself but for both of them. I drew a deep breath so my voice wouldn't shake. Daniel, you betrayed me, you betrayed our children, and you betrayed your mother. There's nothing left to discuss. I will divorce you. I will file suit and I will sever every tie with you. From now on, I refuse to share a roof with a man who breathes deceit. The words rang out, clear and final. I saw a few relatives nod slightly. Some looked at Daniel with pity, but no one defended him. Daniel lunged forward, eyes bloodshot. Emma, I can fix this. I can end it with Allison. I can pull out of the project with my father. Give me a chance. I shook my head, my voice dropping low. A chance? You've had 12 years. A chance to be honest, to honor your vows, to be a worthy father. And you threw it all away. I have nothing left to give you except divorce papers. Quiet until now, Margaret stepped into the space between us. She looked her son straight in the eye, her voice ringing strong but trembling with pain. Daniel, you dug your own grave. You didn't only humiliate Emma and the children. You humiliated me. I raised you with the faith that you would not become Arthur, that you would not follow the path of betrayal. But now you're even worse. From now on, I stand with Emma and my grandchildren. The son I raised is not the man you are now." Daniel staggered as if her words weighed more than any piece of evidence. Allison, still standing in the corner, whispered, "Daniel, say something. You told me we had a future." He turned to her, eyes wild. "Shut up, Allison." I stood tall, a strange lightness laced with ache. I had lost a husband, lost a friend, lost my illusions, but I had found myself. Margaret came to me, placed a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft but carrying to everyone. "Emma, you are not alone. You have me, you have the children, and you have this family. My son chose the wrong path. But you chose the truth. And I will walk with you." Daniel collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. I heard him mutter, "Everything is ruined." I looked at him one last time, then pulled Ethan and Lily into my arms. In my eyes, there was no longer the man who once knelt beneath a cherry tree to propose. Only a stranger, drowning in his own ambition and lies. And I knew my path would no longer run parallel to his. I left the large house on Queen and Hill on a crisp spring morning. The windows that once glowed during family dinners were shut tight, reflecting the silhouette of a woman carrying the last cardboard boxes to her car. It had once been the home of my dreams, where I thought Daniel and I would raise Ethan and Lily to adulthood. But after everything, it was only walls cracked by lies. I sold that house, used part of the money to buy a smaller place near the kids' schools. The new home had 2 bedrooms and a modest backyard, but to me it was a beginning. In the mornings, I could walk Lily to ballet class and watch Ethan play soccer with friends on the nearby field. Not lavish, not grand, but every corner held the peace we had missed for too long. Returning to work wasn't easy. I had left architecture for years to care for our family. When I sent out applications, I feared being forgotten, that my resume was just a faded sheet of paper. But I decided to try. I attended an urban design seminar downtown, stepping into a room full of bright, energetic faces. A short-haired woman introduced herself as Claire, the lead at a local design firm, and struck up a conversation. I was a bit awkward, explaining that I had been an architect then left for family. Claire smiled, "Passion never goes out of date, Emma. If you want to come back, this community will welcome you." Her words felt like a door opening. I began taking small projects, redesigning storefronts and cafes. The feel of a pencil in my hand, drawing clean lines across paper, brought me back to life. At night, after the kids fell asleep, I sat at the little living room desk, plans spread out, my heart full of an energy I hadn't felt in a long time. Margaret became the anchor I never expected. After the upheaval, she moved to a small lakeside apartment near us to help with the kids. Each morning she took Ethan to school and picked Lily up from ballet. Sometimes I came home late from a project to find dinner already made and the 2 of them chattering about their day. Once I said quietly, "Mother, you don't have to do all this. I don't want you to carry more." Margaret set her hand on my shoulder, voice firm. "Emma, this isn't a burden. It's love. I may have lost faith in my son, but I will never abandon you and the children." Her words soothed me. Some families break, but some bonds are forged stronger from the ruins. Ethan and Lily changed too. One evening at the table, Ethan looked unusually thoughtful. He asked, "Mom, why did Dad lie? He's so good at what he does, so many people trust him. Why didn't he live honestly?" I looked at my son, his clear eyes searching for a way to understand the world. I smoothed his hair and answered slowly, "Talent or reputation doesn't matter as much as honesty. If you have everything but live in lies, you will lose it all in the end. Your father chose wrong. I don't want you or Lily to repeat that." Lily, sitting beside him, nodded solemnly as if she understood it all. She slipped her tiny hand into mine. "Mom, I will always tell the truth even when it's hard." In that moment, I knew they had learned a lesson no book could teach. As we rebuilt our lives, those who had betrayed me faded from our circle. Allison stopped appearing at Seattle's high society gatherings. Friends turned their backs. Project invitations vanished. I heard she left the Capitol Hill apartment and scraped by at a small design firm. The price of building a life on lies comes faster than people expect. Daniel was different. News of his shady money spread. The law firm that once touted him as a star cut ties immediately. Partners avoided him, old friends stopped calling. He was ostracized in the legal world, a lost shadow of a lawyer who had once stood at the top. And Arthur, the man who returned only to repeat the cycle of betrayal, didn't escape either. The Westlake Development Land Project came under investigation. I saw his name in the news, tied to words like corruption, kickbacks, and federal investigation. The man who abandoned his family to chase power finally got caught in the whirlpool he created. Some afternoons I sat by the window of our new home, watching Ethan practice shooting hoops in the yard, listening to Lily plink out piano notes. I breathed deeply, taking in the smell of fresh wood in the house and the sea breeze drifting in from Seattle. My life was no longer intact the way it once was, but it was real. I no longer lived inside the illusion Daniel created, but in the reality I had built with my own hands. Margaret often said, "Emma, you lost a husband, but you found yourself again. That is what matters most." I smiled, looking at her reading in the corner of the living room, and I knew she was right. My new life wasn't an easy path, but every step was firm, every day meaningful. And I knew that I, together with my children and Margaret, would keep walking forward with pride and honesty as our compass. At Ethan's elementary school graduation, the small school on Green Lake Hill was alive with flags and children's laughter. I sat in the middle row beside Margaret and Lily. Lily wore a simple white dress, her hair neatly braided, eyes bright with excitement. Margaret draped a pale blue shawl over her shoulders, her hand holding mine, steady and warm as it had been through all these months. On stage, Ethan stepped out in a blue graduation gown. The small basketball once tucked under his arm was now replaced by an honor certificate. He held his head high, his eyes shining as they searched the crowd. When they found mine, I nodded and smiled. That smile came from somewhere deep inside, where I had walked through darkness to find light again. I heard the announcer's voice. "Congratulations to Ethan Harrison, recipient of the Student of Honesty and Integrity Award." Applause thundered through the hall. I saw Margaret dab her eyes while Lily jumped up, clapping and shouting, "Ethan! Ethan!" The memory of that long, lonely night in the kitchen came back. When I first held the evidence, I remembered standing before the Capitol Hill apartment, the silver necklace glinting on Allison's neck. And the day I made my final choice. No forgiveness, no turning back, only forward. All of it had led me here, to this moment where my son stood on stage, honored for the very value our family had chosen: honesty. At the back of the hall, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Daniel. He sat quietly, far from us, his hair disheveled, his suit wrinkled. Once the pride of the legal world, he now stood stripped of respect and admiration. Now he was only a lonely shadow watching his son with hollow eyes. In that moment I felt no triumph. He had once had everything: a home, 2 loving children, a devoted wife, and a mother proud of him. But he had thrown it all away for lies and ambition. I turned to Margaret. She had seen Daniel too, but only shook her head slightly as if to say, "He chose that path." When the ceremony ended, Ethan ran down and hugged me tight. "Mom, I did it." His voice brimmed with pride. I hugged him back. "You didn't just do it, Ethan. You proved the most important thing. When you live with honesty, you'll always stand tall." Lily rushed in, her little arms wrapping around both me and her brother. Margaret bent down, embracing all 3 of us, her arms wide and strong as if she could hold the whole family together. Far away, Daniel still sat motionless. He didn't come over, didn't congratulate, only sat watching. Amid the laughter and chatter of other families, he was like a man out of place. I drew in a long breath, letting the image carve itself into memory. Inside me rang a clear thought: I had lost a husband, but I found myself. And more importantly, I found a real family, the ones who stayed with me. I squeezed Ethan and Lily's hands, turned to Margaret and smiled. And in that moment I knew the road ahead, though still full of challenges, was now a road of truth, of trust, and of a home rebuilt on the strongest bricks. Sitting in that auditorium, I understood that some losses seem impossible to recover from, but sometimes they open a new path. Daniel wasn't at my side anymore, but Ethan was, Lily was, Margaret was, and so was I, Emma, unafraid of the truth. Each of us may face unexpected storms: betrayal, broken trust, or the choice between forgiving and walking away. But the most important thing, as I had learned, is to hold on to honesty and pride as you move forward. And what about you? If you were in my place, would you choose to forgive or to walk away to find yourself again? I would love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. There are more stories about love, family, and the power of truth that I will continue to share with you.